right, you may proceed when ready.
May I please swear?
Yes.
On December 3rd of 2022, Prince Holland is riding in the front seat of an SUV, being driven back from football tryouts from the Legends Center. At the corner of Moncrief and New Kings Road, a blue Kia Rio filled with these two defendants will pull up on the driver's side of that red SUV and shoot 22 rifle rounds at and into that vehicle. Prince Holland will have a bullet enter the left side of his head and come out the right side of his head. Prince Holland will die sitting there in that front passenger seat. He will die in that seat, the evidence will show, because these two defendants saw an opportunity to try and shoot and kill the driver of that SUV. You also hear the 11-year-old Talent Walker be in the back middle seat of that sport utility vehicle. You will start to hear firecrackers from the left, from the driver's side of the vehicle. You will see glass shatter. He'll see the driver scramble into the back seat. He himself and his friends, Ezekiel Cooper and Rasheed Green, in the back seat, as well as the driver, will try and flee out of the back right side of the vehicle. They finally get out of the car. The shooting stops. Cars have fled, trying to catch their breath. And Talent Walker will start spitting or foaming blood out of his mouth. And they realize, or he realizes, with Ezekiel and Rasheed, that he's been shot in the back. Jalen McIntyre, who's the driver of the vehicle, get hit multiple times as he's in the vehicle and as he's trying to get into the back seat to get out of the vehicle. He gets out and goes to the ground. He has a bullet wound to his right arm, which I believe breaks bone, fingers, his abdomen, and his multiple gunshot wounds to his leg. He and Talent Walker will survive their wounds. Prince Holland will not. This is ultimately the scene of what happened on Moncrief Road at the stoplight of New Kings Road on December 3rd of 2022. Now, you've briefly been read the charges from the indictment. And we'll go over them in great detail in closing arguments. But for now, you've heard that there are 3 charges of attempted second-degree murder. The 3 children that were in the back. Attempted second, because there's no premeditation towards them. You'll see there's an attempted first-degree murder for Jalen McIntyre, the driver. He was the target of the shooting. It was premeditation on him. And then you'll see first-degree murder in regards to Prince Holland. However, while there's not premeditation towards Prince Holland, there is what was explained earlier, first-degree felony murder, which is first-degree murder. And that is, in the commission of the felony, attempted murder would be one of them. Of any of the 4 you pick them in the car, Prince Holland died as a result of the action. Now, I don't think it's going to come down to whether a crime has been committed in this case. I believe it's going to come down to who committed the crime. Over the next few days, you'll hear from many people, and you'll see many forms of evidence, physical, you'll see bullet casings, you'll see surveillance footage, you'll see a lot. Let me give you a little bit of background of what the evidence will show. The evidence will show that there is a group of people. And that is Marcel Johnson, Kentrevious Garard, Kobe Johnson, which is Marcel Johnson's brother, Emmanuel Pringle, which is a friend, and Isaiah Pringle, which I believe is the cousin of Emmanuel Pringle. And there are some other groups of friends as well. But you'll hear the reference of 320. And what that is, or what the evidence will show that is that these groups of friends like to reference that number. They like to reference that number because a friend of theirs had passed, or a friend of other friends earlier had passed on March 20th. They refer to themselves, or they like to say a lot, 320. You'll also hear a group of friends. The first is going to be Jalen McIntyre. He's going to be the driver of the red SUV. There's going to be a lot of names. I'm sorry. There is Marquise Holloway, who is the half-brother, but they consider each other brothers of Jalen. You'll hear other names. You'll hear Corey Poole in regards to the detectives doing investigations. You may hear a couple other names. But you'll hear the reference 3, the number, just like 320, just a number. They like to reference 3. And so ultimately, you'll hear a little bit of the background of a feud between the people that like to reference 320 and the people that like to reference 3. And prior to 2019, there's maybe 1 or 2 scuffles, incidences between the two, or between certain people from it. Not like they're getting into big groups and fighting. And in 2019, there's an incident that takes place at a barbershop. So the barbershop happens to be either being ran or managed by a man who happens to be seeing or dating the mother of Jalen, driver of the SUV, and his brother, Marquise, Mr. Holland. And at that barbershop, Marcel Johnson will be with Isaiah Pringle, who is the cousin of Emmanuel Pringle, as well as, I believe, Joshua Holmes, and there'll be a shooting, and Marcel will get shot. Isaiah Pringle also gets shot in his head and actually loses vision. And so from there, we have an instance where there's a person by the name of Jonathan Robinson, otherwise known as Wicks. He is a friend in the group that likes to reference 3. He gets killed in January of 2022. Either just before or shortly after, a person by the name of Joshua Holmes, who's at the barbershop, friend that likes to reference 320, starts to diss Wicks online. Joshua Holmes gets murdered in June of 2022. Corey Poole, a member in the person that likes to reference 3, starts dissing Holmes after he gets murdered. So you see the back and forth, or the hatred, if you will, towards one group of friends towards another. In September of 2022, you'll hear that Kobe Johnson, brother of Marcel Johnson, he'll go out and he will start taking photos at a place that just so happens where some of the members that like to reference 3 are doing a fundraiser car wash, or a football team that they're trying to start to join a league. And at some point, Kobe goes up to him with a wad of cash and takes out a 20 and basically says, "Here you go. You're doing what you're doing, guys. You're doing a good job." And Jalen was there, driver of the red SUV. His brother Marquise was there. So they beat him up. They beat up Kobe. And you'll see a photo that Kobe on FaceTime with Marcel of him with slightly little bruises around the time that happened, which I believe was about September 23rd, 2022. You'll also see some YouTube videos. You'll see some YouTube videos of Marcel Johnson doing some rap, doing some drill rap, if you will, under the name Spaz So Broke. And you'll see in those videos, you'll see Kentrevious Garard with him as well. And the key to these videos is not to say, hey, these people are in rap videos, that's bad, right? No. The key to these videos is to see the relationship, is to see the friendship between Marcel Johnson and Kentrevious Garard, and how close they are, and what they're willing to do with each other. You'll You'll hear evidence of people calling them friends. In fact, people referring to them as brothers. Brothers who on December 3rd, 2022 see an opportunity for whatever you want to call it. Revenge, retaliation, something to rap about, when they see, or when somebody sees, a red SUV. A red SUV that Marquise Holloway used to drive, and now Jalen McIntyre drives. A red SUV that happens to be in a parking lot at the Legends Center. And you'll see a map, and you'll see how the parking lot is right up against Soutel. You're driving by and there's a shiny red Mercedes SUV sitting in the parking lot, you're going to see it. Kentrevious Garard lives, I believe, with a family member, I believe his mother, up on 7th Street, which is up off Soutel right before you hit Lem Turn. About just a little over 2 miles away from the Legends Center. So anybody driving to or from, going by Soutel, might see that red SUV on the side of the road, or on the parking. You're going to see on December 3rd of 2022, there are phone calls between Marcel and Garard starting around noon that day. At 3:55, and I'm going to be kind of estimation with these times, because you are going to see surveillance footage. It's going to have timestamps on them. Some of them might be 2 minutes off, some of them might be 3 minutes off, some of them might be 4 minutes off. There is one that you will see, because this homicide happens just shy of 6:21 p.m., you will see surveillance that says about 7:18 or 7:19 because one of the people didn't fall back in regards to daylight savings time. But somewhere around 3:55, Marcel Johnson drops his grandmother off in a blue Kia Rio that his grandmother owned at the time. Drops her off on Integra Drive, which is up on the north side. He calls Trey at 3:58 p.m. And at 4:02 p.m., he leaves from his grandmother's. And you will see cell site data of him and where he travels. And you'll see his cell site go from his grandmother's house to 7th Street, where Kentrevious lives. The cell site shows him getting there between 4:15 and 4:25 p.m. And it just so happens he calls Trey at 4:19 p.m. as he's arriving. After this time, there are no other calls or text messages to Trey until well after the homicide. At 4:28 p.m., Marcel's phone stops communicating with the network. Now, there are some times, and I think I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, his phone will communicate with the network at about 5:45 and 6:15, briefly. And you'll see from his device activity that he's actually accessing the map feature. However, after he accesses it at 6:15 p.m., the evidence will show that his phone then gets put on airplane mode. And, weirdly enough, a few moments after, or a few minutes after, actually dies from power failure. Because when he turns it on, or charges it, or powers it back up at 6:36, which is going to be about 15 minutes after the homicide, his phone will show, it doesn't show when airplane mode comes on, weirdly enough, it shows when airplane mode comes off. And it will show that when he powered it on and turned it on, he manually went and took it off of airplane mode. Let's get back to how that red SUV got there. What was going on at Legends that day? Well, Jalen was an assistant coach. He and a couple guys got together and was putting together a 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 football team, seeing what they could do. If they got a team together, maybe they could join a league. They put out flyers that the tryouts were going to be on December 3rd at the Legends Center, the field's just north of the building. Talent Walker got one of those flyers. So on the day of the tryouts, he goes over to Zeke's house, Ezekiel, to get some gear and a Zeke. Now Zeke is also going with him. They walk down to the house. I think it's Coach Mike that they're supposed to meet at, but I guess not really a problem because it's good to have too many people when you're trying to form a team. There's too many people to get into Coach Mike's car. So Coach Jalen, Coach Mike asks him to drive a few kids in his red SUV to the Legends, and he does that. They get there, they do drills, they do practice, maybe there's some scrimmaging afterwards. Then it's time to go, just a little bit after 6. They will leave, and they will take a left coming out of the Legend Center to go south on Sutel. They will go down south on Sutel. They will take a right on Moncrief, head west on Moncrief. And the next major intersection with the light will be New Kings. We'll get to that intersection, and that is where the incident will happen. Jayla McIntyre will be in the front, it will be in the driver's seat. Prince Holland will be in the front passenger seat. Ezekiel Cooper will be in the rear left. Talent Walker will be in the rear middle. And Rasheed Green will be in the rear right. You will see surveillance. You will see the red SUV turning out. First video you're going to see it, well, the first video when it gets to the actual cars is it turning out. And after it turns out, after a few moments, you will see a blue car race into the scene from the other side of the camera, the other side of the road, potentially where they were sitting, watching the red SUV, waiting for it to leave. It will turn onto the road and try and catch up, but interesting enough, there happens to be a car accident down by the Sutel Liquors. So you'll actually see the red car, an ambulance, and then the blue car. So the ambulance comes up. You'll then go, and this is from the Franklin and Sons funeral home, is where we got it. This is the one that's going to be an hour ahead. In between, you'll actually see a CCTV camera in the area. And it will show the red SUV start to slow down for the ambulance. And the blue car come up, and awkwardly doesn't know what to do now that it's caught up, but not at the place it wants to be at. And so ultimately, as they get out of view, the next video will be from the Sutel Liquors. You will actually see the blue car arrive first, where the ambulance is stopped for the accident. And the red SUV will pull up right behind it. Blue car will cut through the parking lot to a side angled street to get back on. And the red SUV will wait there for 40 seconds until it's able to go into oncoming traffic and get around the ambulance. But just a mere few tenths of a mile down the street, at the corner with Moncrief, you will see a Walgreens camera, how the red SUV is now back in front. It goes and takes a ride on Moncrief, the blue car is right behind it. When you see the Walgreens, it will be a little weird. You'll see a lot of red cars in the parking lot, and that might distract you, but it's actually out on the road, and you will see it when it comes by the other angle of the red car and the blue car. Then on Moncrief, you will see from a community center surveillance, and you will see a white Charger, a random car, a red SUV, and a blue car, and then another random car behind it. And that order is key. Remember that order. And you'll see it on the surveillance. You can write it down then. Because you will see at New Kings, there is a food mart on the far side of the street, unfortunately. So the surveillance that we have from there is going to be the food mart, gas pumps, road intersection, and then the side of Moncrief that happened. You will see there are 2 cars in the straight lane, stopped at the light. When the white Charger pulls up to the straight lane and stops. The random car in between will get in the right-hand turning lane and start to make its right. The red SUV, and you'll notice it because it will have headlights and a set of fog lights underneath. It will pull up and will be behind the white Charger. You will then see the blue car slowly start to pull up, and the car behind it will start to go and make its right-hand turn. So there'll be a little bit of chaos because we'll try and zoom in as best we can for you. But ultimately, the blue car will pull into the left-hand turning lane and come up on the side. And as it's coming through the back and on the sides, it will unload 22 rounds at and into that red SUV. We'll see photos of that SUV. You will see one of the muzzle flashes of the 22 very carefully if you look on the video. At this point, after hearing the gunshots, the white Charger gets into the right lane and flees. Another car does the same. Light happens to turn green. The 2 cars begin to move into the intersection that were in front of the white Charger, and the blue car, now in the left lane after shooting up, has now entered the intersection, turned, and cut off these 2 cars, almost causing an accident, to then flee north on New Kings. You might say, why'd you give us all that detail of that description? Because you will hear testimony of 2 people, one of which was at the scene and one of which was in one of those 2 cars. The one at the scene by across the street will testify how they believe the white Charger was the one shooting. However, you will hear that she did not see the shooting. She heard the shooting, turned, and saw a white Charger speeding away. The driver of the white Charger will come in to testify as well. Like I said, the first 911 call was at 6:21 p.m. I believe the Food Mart surveillance time is about 6:19 p.m. Obviously, it takes moments for some people to call 911, so the best we can say is that the shooting happened just before 6:21 p.m. After the shooting, blue Kia Rio ends up back at Kentrevious Garard's house, over on 7th. You'll see the phone records. Kentrevious calls Kobe to come hang out. Kobe is hanging out with Emmanuel. Emmanuel's on a GPS monitor, so you'll actually see the movements that Emmanuel makes that night. They go up to Trey's house. When they arrive, Kobe stays in the car, Emmanuel goes inside. They come back out, they get in multiple cars, and they go to a person's house, Mr. Moriash. Try and see if they can get the blue car clean. Can't do it because he's about to go to Georgia. So they bail on that, and they go into the Brooklyn area. Familiar where Park Street is, where the Emerald Trail is starting to be completed on Park, on the other side of downtown, east of Forest. From there, about 2 blocks up from that is Spruce Street. It's about a block up from Chelsea Street. On Chelsea Street are the apartments that Marcel Johnson stays with a female friend. And 2 blocks up, or 1 block up from that, is a park where some people like to just hang out. And that's where they go. When they get there, there's discussion not about anything that's happened except for one thing. You will hear testimony of Kentrevious Garard making a statement. I sprayed that bitch up. And you'll hear explanation of what spraying means. I shot that thing up. After Brooklyn, Marcel asked Kobe and Pringle to take the blue car back to the grandmother's house. And that's the end of the night. Other than you will see some surveillance of Marcel leaving his apartment complex later that night, getting into a white Challenger, not a Charger, totally different, and then coming back later in the morning to go to bed. After the shooting, law enforcement gets called to the scene. You'll hear from the evidence technicians that took photos of the scene, took photos of the car. They will be from outside of the car. They start collecting surveillance, the surveillance that you will all see that is already pieced together in a kind of flow-style movie. They start listening to social media, they start listening to different talk on phone calls, and overhears things of 320 and 3, so they turn their attention there. They also view a social media video that gives them a tip or a lead on the case that brings them to Spazzo Brook. It brings them to Marcel Johnson. So, they look further, they find a video of Marcel Johnson with a Zastava-style rifle. Now, it's from March of 2022, but it gives them interest, and they find that through ATF records that his brother Kobe had bought a Zastava-style rifle back in January of 2022. Legally. You'll hear from FDLE testifying how the firing pin, the mark that it leaves on the primer, and she'll testify how all 22 casings match each other. There's only one shooting in this case. There's only one gun in this case. But she'll say on the primer, on the breech face, on the primer part, the firing pin leaves a mark and then leaves a ring around the mark that is very unique in regards to Zastava-style rifles. So that is the reason why the detectives started looking for Zastava-style rifles. They also find, and you'll hear that they look through the surveillance. And based on the unique style of the blue car in the surveillance, the detectives come to the conclusion that it appears to be a blue Kia Rio. Way before they find that Marcel Johnson's grandmother owns a blue Kia Rio. They pull cell site. They find that Marcel's, I've already talked about the 428, no RTT data, and then at 6:36, when he turns his phone on after the homicide, the phone starts getting RTT data. You might be saying, what is RTT data? But you'll be explained that when you're not using your phone will constantly ping to a tower, that they know where you're at. So if someone tries to call you, they can connect your phone quicker. And it sometimes does it multiple times a minute. So for the period around the homicide, the phone is receiving no RTT data, but when it's turned back on at 6:36 and the airplane mode is taken off, it starts to receive that data again. It starts to communicate with the tower. You will see Kentrevious Garard's phone number for the phone that the detectives were able to discover. What's key about that is that when Mr. Garard is eventually arrested, he is found with 3 phones. None related to it, all newly activated after the homicide. But the one that they did know about, they pulled his records for that. His phone pings at his house on 7th Street throughout the day. However, there is no outgoing calls or texts around the time of the homicide. So the phone, one of the phones that Mr. Garard is using, stays at his house and is at his house during the time of the homicide. There is one bit of usage that does happen. It's from 5:27 p.m. to 7:02 p.m. There is background data usage, which could, and Agent Blythe will tell you, it could be someone using it, and it could be the phone itself having anything open, any of the browsers open, any of the apps open, anything automatically updated. There's no way to tell one way or the other. From 12:36 p.m. to 7:23 p.m. And 7:23 is when Kentrevious calls Kobe to come hang out. There is not a text or call on that cell phone. On December 22nd, they do a search warrant of Mr. Garard's home. They don't find his Zastava rifle. They don't find rifle rounds. It was also 19 days since the homicide. The phones that they do recover from Mr. Garard when he was arrested months later in Orlando, Florida, they do find 2 little bitty search things that are of interest. And one is on December 25th, be it it's 3 days after they just did a search of his mother's home, but it is, how do the police track a SIM card if it's not installed in the phone? Is it possible or not? And that search he actually tries to delete. It was in the process of being deleted by the phone when it was downloaded. And on December 31st, he looks up Marcel in the Duval County Jail. Also on Kentrevious Garard, on the phone, through the phone, we're able to go through his iCloud account, and there is a single photo we are able to recover. Doesn't mean he took it. Someone could have sent it to him and he saved it, but on his iCloud is a photo of the same Zastava that we see Marcel Johnson with, and there also is an Instagram video, the one from March, of Marcel Johnson with the Zastava, the same fire. Now you also hear that 10 months later, so the Zastava is never recovered. 10 months later, officers get called out to a shooting by ShotSpot. Nobody calls it in. Just heard of gunshots, they come out, and there's a casing on the ground. They pull the casing, and it matches the 22 casings from our scene. That gun is still out there being used by someone. But just remember, Marcel Johnson isn't arrested on this case until 12 days after the homicide. Trey not until December 24th of 2023. Marcel's phone was recovered when he was arrested. It was the same one, and you'll hear the phone number from the cell site. You'll see that airplane mode was used. You'll see the Zastava firearm. You'll see a photo of him with the Zastava firearm 4 days before the homicide. You will see photos that his phone captures. A lot of times when you go to websites, your phone will put in the capture of different photos from articles and things of that nature. That day, on December 3rd at 9:43 p.m., you will see photos showing that he is looking at articles about the homicide at Action News Jackson. 2.5 hours after this shooting, he is looking specifically at articles about this homicide. On December 4th, he takes a screenshot of one of the articles from News4Jax. And in the middle of the screenshot, it says, "There is no suspect or vehicle information at this time." You'll hear evidence that the 22 casings that were on scene, detectives went ahead and sent half of them to a private lab to see if DNA could be recovered from them. You'll hear that DNA is very hard to recover from firearms because of the heat that goes from firing a gun around the cartridge casing. Heat likes to deteriorate things like fingerprints and DNA, and so it's very hard to get DNA off casings, but they still try. However, the result was a mixture with one at least being male, but it was too inconclusive to come to any other conclusion or to do any other processing other than that. You'll hear from Jennifer Brown from FDLE when the blue car is found a week or two later, I believe also on December 15th. They swab the car. It was found 12 days later. They swab 4 parts and they take the front passenger cushion seat and they analyze it for DNA. And you'll hear that 2 places there was not enough DNA to actually analyze, so we don't know whose DNA it is. There's not enough of it. In 3 places, they did find DNA. Mr. Garard is excluded from those 3 places. And you'll hear testimony that doesn't mean he was never in the car. It just means that there was somebody in this car that has left a significant amount of DNA to test, and he is not the person from this DNA. Once again, the car is used 12 more days after the homicide. One thing that they did find, they did on the front right passenger door, when you open it, and you have the window and you have the frame around it, on the inside part of the frame that if the door was shut, you could still touch, find a fingerprint. 12 days later. And they analyze that fingerprint, and that fingerprint comes back to Mr. Garard. And all that means is that he was in the vehicle at some point. Doesn't mean he was on the vehicle on 12/3. But listen to the interview he gives, and it will give more context. This is the part where I do have to kind of cut at this point. Each one of the respective jurors will get to hear an interview of their respective defendant. The other side doesn't. The evidence reads. So I can't go into them details because for time purposes, we have a witness who has surgery tomorrow morning that we're trying to rush on today. So I've elected to do one of them. Based on that, I cannot tell you the details of what Mr. Johnson told the police. I cannot tell you the details of what Mr. Garard told the police. So just keep that in the back of your mind, because it will be shown to you and played to you at one point. And when you hear what's in the interviews, you see the totality of the evidence, the state will come back at the end of this trial and ask you to find both defendants guilty as charged as to all.
Thank you, Mr. Grau.